All right, let's dive into a really fascinating historical puzzle. It's all about a figure you might not know well, but trust me, her story tells us so much about faith, fear, and family. Her name is Salome. So here's the paradox right up front. On one hand, you have Salome, the devoted follower, a part of Jesus' inner circle. But on the other hand, she's recorded as being right there, demanding his execution. How does a loyalist become an accuser? I mean, it doesn't seem possible.
So that's the big question we're tackling today. How could someone so close to a movement suddenly call for the death of its leader? Was it a simple betrayal? Or is there something way more complicated going on here? Let's dig in and investigate. Okay, let's start to unravel this thing. We're going to piece together the story of Salome, who, by the way, was the mother of two of the most famous apostles, James and John.
So who was this woman at the center of our mystery? Well, Salome only pops up a few times in the New Testament, but her story, wow, it's like a window that opens right up into the incredible pressures and tensions that were bubbling up inside that very first group of followers. To really get the full shock of her later actions, we first have to establish just how loyal she was. We need to see her credentials as a true follower. The biblical account itself shows us she was a pillar of this community. I mean, she wasn't just the mother of apostles. She was out there with them, traveling on missionary journeys. She was a key figure, even mentioned by name in the Gospel of Mark. This is not some fringe character. She was right in the thick of it. Now, this quote, this is absolutely key. It gets right to her core motivation. Even in the text, her defining feature is being a fiercely protective mother, someone who would do just about anything to keep her kids safe. Remember that, because it's going to become really, really important in a minute. Okay, so her devotion is crystal clear. Now, let's zoom out. Salome wasn't making these choices in a vacuum. Jerusalem at this time was a political powder keg, just simmering with tension. You're about to see just how divided her world was. Take a look at this. It gives you a snapshot of a society completely on edge. You've got hostile authorities on one side, a small group of devoted followers on the other, and then this huge, uncertain population just caught in the middle. This wasn't just a simple disagreement. We're talking about a high-stakes environment where your allegiance could literally cost you everything. And here it is. This is the crucial piece of the puzzle. Salome's shocking demand didn't just come out of nowhere. It happened right after her sons, James and John, were arrested by those very same hostile authorities. All of a sudden, this isn't about beliefs anymore. Her family was in mortal danger. You see, this context changes everything. Suddenly, just calling it betrayal feels way too simple. We have to ask, what was really driving her? Let's start with the most raw human explanation: pure fear. Think about it. Her sons are in custody. Could her demand have been a desperate, panicked move to distance her family from a leader who was about to be killed? Maybe she thought it would save them from the same fate. Or, what about the crowd? Can you imagine the pressure? In that tense, volatile atmosphere, with authorities everywhere and the mob screaming, could she have just been swept up in the moment? A public denunciation might have seemed like the only possible way to show that her family was no longer a threat. Then there's this third possibility, a huge misunderstanding. A lot of people back then expected a political messiah, a warrior king who would lead a rebellion against Rome. When Jesus was arrested and facing execution instead, could her demand have come from a place of deep confusion, maybe even shattered hope? But wait, what if we've been looking at this all wrong? More recently, scholars have started looking at Salome's actions through a completely different lens, one that reframes her not as a victim of her circumstances, but as someone who is very much in control. See, from this perspective, Salome's demand wasn't weakness at all. It was a strategic choice. In a world where men held all the power, this could have been a calculated move, a terrible public act of maternal protection designed to save her sons' lives in a world that was out to get them. It recasts her as a pragmatic survivor, not a faithless follower. So, after all that, what do we make of this incredibly complicated figure? What's her legacy? Well, the truth is, there's no simple answer, and that's exactly what makes her story so powerful. I think the most important thing to get here is that Salome isn't some villain we should condemn. She's more like a symbol of just how messy and, well, human faith can be. Her story shows us that belief isn't always a straight line. It's often a tangled web of conviction and fear and love. When you really boil it down, her dilemma comes from three powerful forces that we all have to deal with in our own lives: that fierce loyalty we feel to our family, the immense pressure we get from the world around us, and the personal convictions we hold deep down inside. Her story is just a dramatic example of those forces clashing. And that's why her story still matters today. It's a powerful reminder that faith in the real world isn't easy. It forces us to really grapple with our values, to understand the context we're living in, and to acknowledge the incredibly tough choices people have to make when they're under pressure. So I'll leave you with this to think about. When you consider your own deepest beliefs, how do you see those same forces, family loyalty, social pressure, and personal conviction, playing out? Salome's paradox isn't just some ancient story. It's a very, very human one.